One of my friends built a farm the other day, but it ended up looking like this. So I figured in this episode, let's talk about hoppers. From the basics of their usage to some tips and tricks, like how mud can be used to replace minecart systems in some farms such as bamboo and sugarcane, plus some of the more advanced features as well. So let's gain a better understanding about how storage systems work and how hoppers move items, as well as some alternative ways to avoid using minecarts, or just to have more customization tools on hand. To reach these goals, we need to start with the basics. Hoppers move items. They pull items in from the large hole at the top, and they push items out from the skinny section at the bottom. Think of them like a funnel. We pour liquid in the top part of the funnel, and it comes out of the tiny hole. So any item that lands on top of the hopper will get pulled in. But the hopper itself is a container that has 5 slots. And once it's pulled in items, it will never poop those items back on the ground. Instead, it's trying to push the items inside of whatever container it's pointed into. So this allows us to pick up free-flowing items and store them inside of other containers. We can control which direction the hopper is pointing by controlling where we look when we place the hopper. It will always point toward the block that we aim at when placing the hopper. Think of it like a bendy straw. The straw will bend toward whatever we aim at when we place it. The exception to this is if we aim at the bottom of a block, the hopper will point down. So they can never move items up. They can only push items down or horizontally. To move items back up, we would have to use other means, such as a dropper elevator or a bubble column. So anytime that we go to use hoppers, we need to keep that in mind, that since hoppers cannot move items up, our item intake is inherently going to be higher than our storage. Now, since hoppers always point toward the block that you're aiming at when you place them, if we want to move items into a chest, we need to start placing hoppers by aiming at that chest. We need to build this pipeline backwards. We need to start with where we want the items to go and work our way back to where we want the items to enter. And at no point in the pipeline do we want to change direction. We need to always make sure that we are aiming toward where we want the items to go, never where we want the items to come from. We always want to be aiming toward the end. Hoppers pull items from the block that is directly above them, whether that block is air or a container. So normally, it cannot pull items through blocks. But there are ways that we can work around this limitation. Soul sand, bottom slabs, and mud, for example, are not actually full blocks. Items that land on top of these blocks are actually sinking inside of the blocks. And since those items are sinking, they are within 1 block of the hopper, and thus the hopper can pull them in. Whereas items that land on a regular full block, those items are floating on top of that block. So those items are 2 blocks away from the hopper, and thus out of range. So we can use the unique properties of mud and soul sand on certain farms. Like sniffers can still dig on mud, but since the items sink down into the mud, hoppers can just pull those items out. Same way with sugarcane or bamboo. These crops can still grow on top of mud. Then when harvested, they sink into the mud, putting them within range of hoppers to collect. We can use this mechanic to replace minecart collection systems on certain farms. But hoppers are more expensive than rails. So it really comes down to personal preference and how expensive you think hoppers are versus how annoying you find minecart systems to be. Either way, it's just good to know that we're not always limited to minecart hoppers when we need to collect items through other blocks. Netherwort, sugarcane, bamboo, sniffers, all of these are good examples of farms that can utilize the unique properties of soul sand or of mud and just have hoppers underneath every single sand or every mud, funneling into a collection system. Now, other non-full blocks that hoppers can pull through admittedly have less uses. But maybe you have a kill chamber where you're killing the mobs by hand. Like maybe you want to hide the hoppers and make it to where players can't click on them. Or you want to cover up this physical hole that you and other entities can fall down into. Or maybe you want to block spawns, all while maintaining the functionality of the hoppers. Well, that's where carpet or bottom slabs can come in handy. We can even use this in our trident killers to get rid of the minecart hoppers, just by using soul sand or mud with hoppers underneath. The trident will sink down into these blocks, but it will still be pushed by the pistons magically. And so this will still kill the mobs, like a trident killer does, but now all of the drops will get picked up by regular hoppers rather than by a minecart hopper. So it can be a nice alternative, especially since if tridents fall through the bottom, they will break minecart hoppers, where they can't break a regular hopper. Lots of cool things to keep in mind. But when it comes to storage systems, there are some unique aspects to the hopper's ability to push and pull items that we can examine. So especially for bulk storage, where you have a vertical row of hoppers all pushing into a chest that are stacked on top of each other. Each hopper pulls the item out of the hopper above it before that hopper has a chance to push that item into the chest. And because of this, these systems will fill up from the bottom to the top. So the next to last chest will never receive an item until the last chest and hopper are completely full and items start to back up. And this only applies when singular items are going through the system, meaning that the top hopper is only pulling out one item at a time from that topmost chest. So those singular items get stolen before they're able to be pushed out. But if you have multiple items inside of a hopper, that hopper will successfully push some of those items into its container, because the hopper below it can't steal those items fast enough. This is also related to what is referenced as hopper speed. Now, what hopper speed actually means is how many hoppers are interacting with the bulk of the items. Because hopper speed is static. All hoppers push and pull items at the same rate, which is about 9,000 items per hour that a single hopper can push. So, as long as there's only one item going through the system, it'll be at single hopper speed. All of the hoppers will pull that item down, and it'll end up in the bottom chest. But if we add another hopper that's pushing into this top one, well, now this hopper is pulling from the chest and being pushed into by a second hopper. So it's being loaded at double hopper speed. And that chest is being unloaded at double hopper speed, because there's two hoppers pulling from that chest. So now, since this topmost hopper is being loaded at double speed, the hopper below it won't be able to pull out items fast enough to keep it empty. So half of the items will end up in this top chest because half of them will get pushed out by that top hopper. And the other half will end up down here because those got pulled out by the hoppers below the top one. We can also interact with hoppers using redstone. And all this does is turn the hopper off, essentially transforming it into a regular container. As long as it is locked, it will not push or pull any items. But you could still put items inside of it by clicking on it, just like you could a chest or a barrel. Or other hoppers would still be able to push items into it. Just the hopper that is being powered, that is locked, will not be able to push or pull items. And just like any redstone component, we can place dust on top of it, we could power it with a repeater pointed into it or a comparator, or we can power one of the adjacent solid blocks, and that would also power the component and thus lock the hopper. It follows the same rules as any other component. As a dropper or a dispenser, a lamp or a bulb, we can either power it directly by having dust or a repeater pointed into the hopper, or we can power it indirectly by powering one of the adjacent solid blocks. And more often than not, we'll see hoppers being locked by redstone torches, because that's how item sorters and item filters are built. So this bottom hopper is being locked because it's directly touching the redstone torch. Again, the same rules apply to hoppers as does any redstone component. Then the top hopper is being locked because the torch is powering the solid block above it, and that solid block is touching the topmost hopper. So both of them will remain locked until we turn off that torch. And once that happens, the hoppers will start moving their items yet again. And this is how item sorters and item filters work, is we're abusing our ability to lock and unlock hoppers, paired with them being a container and being able to move items. If we keep all of their slots full, only a specific item can enter that hopper at any given time. Then if we unlock it just long enough to move an item or two, it ensures that all of the slots in the hopper remain full. So it keeps the item filter functioning. But a common misconception when it comes to hoppers is that they're laggy. Now on Java, they are. They're very, very laggy on Java. But on Bedrock, they don't generate lag at all. And I'm like the first person to call out lag machines and tell you to not add lag to the world. But I've built item sorters that have thousands of hoppers on realms, and I didn't drop a single frame. This area has hundreds of hoppers, and it's totally fine. And if you're paranoid about the lag generated from hoppers, you can lock them. A locked hopper is no longer trying to push or pull items, and is therefore basically not doing anything. And we used to be able to put furnaces on top of the hoppers to cut down on lag from them searching for items. But again, if you're playing on Bedrock, you don't have to worry about any of this. Hoppers on Bedrock do not generate noticeable lag, not like Java. On Java, you need to be very careful about this. But on Bedrock, we can actually create lag using hoppers. And that is if a full hopper is trying to push its items into an unloaded chunk. So if there's a line of hoppers that cross a chunk border, and you stand far enough away where only half of these hoppers are loaded, and you stay there long enough for the hoppers to back up, it can generate lag. At least several years ago, when I experienced this, it was laggy until we fixed it. But, I mean, A, they might have changed this by now, and B, the odds of this happening are fairly low, because you have to AFK in a very specific place for items to actually back up right at the chunk border. And there has to be enough items in the system for them to back up. So we should always keep chunk borders in mind with our machines and our redstone and our farms, but the odds of them actually causing problems are significantly low. So it's not like we have to chunk align every single thing that we make. Even if you don't, the odds of it causing problems are fairly low because you have to AFK in very specific places for very specific amounts of time. But anyway, I hope you learned something about hoppers in this video, because learning is awesome, and it gives us more tools to use and have at our disposal to be creative and go nuts with our ideas. But that's all we got for this video. I really hope you enjoyed. If you did, don't forget to like, favorite, share, and subscribe, and be sure to leave a comment. Even if it's just to say hi, I would love to hear from you. But always remember that you are totally awesome, and above all, don't forget to have fun. Bye-bye.